The Steam Deck. No. Today we're not messing around with that. You know, the Steam Deck. That's going to be gone for a little while. Only a little while though. That will be returning. Cheap technology. That's right. We're back with this again, but not exactly this. Like it's going to be a bit different. Technology nowadays has become so incredibly expensive while removing most of the fun and novelty that might come from it. Gone are the days where you could go out and buy a wacky phone such as the Nokia N-Gage, the Toshiba G450, or my personal favourite for no reason whatsoever, the C91 Golden Buddha. That's right, that is a product that exists apparently. Jesus Christ. While none of these phones were particularly good, you know, the idea of going out and purchasing something so insanely novel is something that has become lost to us in a modern age. Nowadays, every iPhone and top-end Samsung looks and pretty much functions exactly the same. Sure, you could go with a lesser-known brand, but 9 times out of 10, there is a reason as to why they aren't as popular. The software may not be up to scratch, the hardware may not even reach close to the S25 Ultra with its absolutely insane Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset. Even the more unique aesthetics of a device may not reach the lofty heights that you might enjoy. There is a reason as to why Apple and Samsung rarely ever change their devices as much as they used to, and it's simply because they sell. These phones are the pinnacle of mobile technology, and so many people snap them up for how powerful they are and for what's inside of them. While specs are incredibly important, and I will never deny that, aesthetics are almost just as important, and they seem to have just been more and more sidelined in the modern age. The last really good Samsung for me was the S22 Ultra. That thing looked so incredibly sleek, and, you know, some of you may be wondering, well there, Mr. Smarty Pants, how come you don't like the S23, 24, or even 25 Ultra? They're the same! Well, one, I do quite like them. You know, the camera you're watching this on is being filmed through an S23 Ultra. You know, it's a brilliant phone. But, also, you sort of said it yourself in that question. They're the same. Obviously, there are subtle differences to both the specs and aesthetic alike, but nothing to warrant another, you know, 1,300 quid a year. Like, that's just insane. Take a look at how different the S22 Ultra is over the S25 Ultra. Well, yes, the S25 Ultra is the better phone overall with those incredible specs, and also it does look slightly different now. The S22 Ultra is still an absolutely incredible phone. Both phones have a 5,000 mAh battery. You know, the S25 will definitely last longer, however, due to it being a much newer device and the much higher efficiency of the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, but at the end of the day, 5,000 mAh is 5,000 mAh. The screen size is incredibly similar, with the S22 Ultra having a still very large 6.8-inch screen, with the S25 Ultra having an ever so slightly bigger 6.9-inch screen. That's going to be barely noticeable in any circumstance, and yet this was a major selling point for it. Both phones use a variant of the Snapdragon 8 chip, with the 22 using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 and the 25 using the brand new Snapdragon 8 Elite. The Gen 1 is still incredibly powerful and will take most, if not all, that you throw at it. A downgrade from the 22, 23 and 24 is that the S Pen in the S25 removes all Bluetooth functionality, meaning that some things like gesture controls will no longer work anymore on the S25 Ultra. While I think it's less than 1% of users actually use that function, some people are gonna have to, you know, really just get used to a different way of using the phone. You know, it's not exactly hard, but it's just annoying. I know that barely anybody used it, and removing this small amount of tech is a cost-effective strategy, but at the end of the day, they're the biggest smartphone company in the world, and so they have more than enough money to just keep that tiny feature in. It just seems incredibly pointless from my point of view. To me, it just sets a precedent that they are even more free to just remove small features here and there over the years, but still charge more and more every year. My point with this whole section is simply that these flagship devices that came out 3 years apart are incredibly similar. The only main saving grace with upgrading these devices is the upgraded storage options and the software updates. Most people never tend to use the max amount of power that these devices can output, and so it's fairly stupid just purely focusing on pure horsepower if many of your customers aren't even going to reach that point of needing a yearly upgrade. With this logic, why not focus on something more like other features, or even aesthetics and feel of a device? That is where these devices come in. The CMF Phone 1 and the Nothing Phone line. This is the Nothing Phone 1, but, you know, there are many of them now. Those of you who are incredibly cultured may recognise these elite devices. Some of you out there may have never heard of the company Nothing or its subsidiary CMF. These phones, especially the Nothing phones, are really out here changing the industry for the better. They never try to be the most powerful device on the market, with the most powerful device being the Nothing Phone 2 having a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, with the least powerful device being this phone, the Nothing Phone 1, with a Snapdragon 778G. This is still a very capable phone, however, with me going back to use it fairly regularly. You know, I was just recently using this as my primary driver over the S23 Ultra you're seeing this footage through. It still runs incredibly smooth, and that is definitely part to its software, which we will touch upon later. Let's quickly talk about their budget-oriented brand, CMF. As of right now, this is the latest and only phone in their arsenal, aptly called the CMF Phone 1. As mentioned a minute ago, the CMF brand is advertised as a budget-oriented subsidiary of the Nothing brand. The Nothing touch is still incredibly noticeable with the way that the tech looks and feels. The CMF brand is quite literally just a play and acronym on the words colour, finish and material. Obviously, this device is not as premium as the Nothing phone, but with that brand name comes a number of redeeming qualities that are actually absent on this and many other flagships on the market. As I mentioned earlier, this phone right here that you're watching this through is an S23 Ultra. You know, a 2023 flagship phone that is still absolutely incredible today with its specs and power compared to something like this. But this is actually my primary phone right now. This is what I am using as my daily driver. It is a far inferior device specs-wise, and it doesn't claim to be anything different, but it is way more fun to use. I absolutely love the way this device feels to me. And if we take a look at the back of the phone, we can see instead of the classic glass that we all know, it uses plastic instead. I know some of you might be looking at the screen of your ultra premium S3 Mini right now thinking, plastic? But that's cheap rubbish. Why would anyone want that on their mobile device? And yes, but it actually works quite well. The reasoning for plastic being here is obviously a cost-effective method, but the way they circumvent the cheap feeling of this is by making it almost fully customizable for the user. What this means is it basically allows you to use, you know, a very unique combination of colours. You can either have a nice theme in which every part is the same colour like this, or you can make your phone look like a 5-year-old with a pack of Crayolas designed it instead. The choice is completely up to you. One of the main selling points with a flagship device is that you can choose the colour of your preference. I, for instance, have a black S23 Ultra that I really like the sleek design of due to its matte black, you know, back. That was actually quite a tongue twister to say. It feels really premium in the hands, but when I had one, I went with the blue Z Fold 5. I liked the back of the phone, but I didn't actually really like the silver trim around the outside all that much. The main takeaway from this is that for people like myself whose mind changes like the weather, preferences that you might have had in one moment seem to be really stupid in the other. While I enjoyed the Z Fold 5 for what it was, I often wish that I could change the colour of the device to suit my current preferences, but alas, I could not. This, however, is why I adore this phone. You can fully remove the back of this phone and change it to a selection of colours that are sold by CMF themselves. But if you have the means to do so, you can also even 3D print your own backs. They released like the files for this, and they released the dimensions, and I even have a few. So it's really cool, the possibilities of this, you know, the customization that this device has. As you can see at the moment, I have the black color that I originally got with this phone. I know I like to sort of say, you know, the black is sleek and whatnot, but sometimes I don't enjoy it. But the reason I got this one is because you can't actually buy the black separately. You have to buy the black with the phone. So I went with this one because, you know, at least I have this then. The process for changing it is really easy as well. It takes genuinely like 2 minutes tops, so it's something I do fairly regularly. It gives me a weird sense of dopamine that I get whenever I open a new device, and so for a person like myself, who is mostly comprised of ADHD, it works out quite well. You know what? Let me actually do this process for you right now, so you can just see how easy it is to do. So, I have a few colours to choose from. Obviously, we've got the black that's already on here, but I have the official CMF light green, but I also bought 2 3D printed ones, and this one is a sort of clear white that also glows in the dark when shone under light, and a nice sort of yellow one that I got with black bits on it with some silver buttons that are in another packet over there, And I use the silver screws in it to give it a sort of Cyberpunk 2077-like design. And so, it's actually really, really cool that you can do these things. But today, I'm going to go with the light green, because it does look really nice. So opening the box that you get, obviously you get your standard case in there, but taking this off is where all the other stuff is. So this is your little round button at the back here. This is your SIM and, whatnot tray. And these are the screws. Now, we already have the silver screws that came with this one in the back of the device instead of the black ones that came with the, the black case. So we're going to stick with these. But you also get this little cool thing here. And now, this is one of the most unique SIM tools I have ever seen. And I don't know why I think this is a great selling point of this device, but I just love how unique this is. Like, it's a little screwdriver as well as a SIM tool. Like, how neat is that? So we can just unscrew this bad boy. Now, this is the most annoying bit. Once you've unscrewed the screw, getting the screw out of the screw hole. I've said screw way too many times. Kill me, please. Oh, come on, you bastard. There you go. There you go. This is a lot easier than it usually is. I mean, considering the dimensions of the 3D printed ones are slightly different than the official ones. As you can see, like there's only a divot where the screw hole is instead of like a small divot around where the screw hole is here. So this one's obviously a bit more dipped in, so it's easy to pull the screws out, but this one's actually really hard. If I was changing to one of them, it would take a little bit longer, but luckily this time I'm not. I'm only showing you how easy it is, not how annoying it can be. But I mean, even still, it's worth putting up with the annoyance if you have like a custom color you really want. Now, I got these off a guy on eBay, and he does just simple colors like that, but he also does ones that you can have like a small logo on the back for a bit more expensive. So if you wanted a blue one with like the Vault-Tec logo, or I'm tempted to get another yellow one with the Cyberpunk logo on. The SIM tool is actually quite useful in this, because I sort of just use it to scoop out the screws. It's like a little, I don't even know. It's like a pry tool. And so from here you do have to remove your SIM and whatnot, but that's fine. And you also have to remove this little back screw here, which I think is actually quite a cool addition. It adds like some depth to the phone. So you take that off, put that there. From here, they do say sort of press in where this button was to lift it, but I am actually really stupid and I can't do that. So what I do is I use the screwdriver and sort of pry it upwards. And just like that, the back is now off. So as you can see under here, you've got some internals of the phone, some loose internals and whatnot. We will be going over this a little bit later and why this might be a deal breaker for some people. But yeah, like for the most part, it's actually really cool that you can do this on a device that is as cheap as it is. So from here, all we want to do is just take the new one and slot it down like that, push it in, and yeah, there we go, it's on. And so now all we got to do is just get these bits and put them in. I tell you, taking this apart and putting this together is a lot less crunchy than the Steam Deck. And so it makes me feel a lot better about myself, like I'm not breaking anything like I did with that. Still haven't managed to get that fixed, by the way. As you can see, it's just kind of sat there now. I use that as my media center over my Steam Deck, and I use my Steam Deck as my primary handheld PC. But other than that, it's just like an £800 paperweight, which is, not great. And by £800, I do mean the currency, not the weight, because that'd be a bit heavy. I would not want to buy a handheld PC that weighed more than, well, slightly less than the average American. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit off screen, because there's a cool surprise I want to show, well, explain later. Alright, from here, all we got to do is slap that bad boy back in there. And just like that, you're done. The back is changed, the phone looks completely different now. And, damn if it doesn't look good. Yeah, just like that. We've now got a nice little theme going. Looks bloody lovely. It is really just as easy as that. Like, it took me about 2-3 minutes, even with these horrible gloves on. And yes, some of you may have noticed, I do have different gloves this time. The other gloves were fucked, and so I bought some disposable ones instead. And they allow me to touch screens better as well, so that's good. Yeah, it looks good now. We've got some production value going. You may have noticed that on the back of the phone, obviously with this large screw here, it doesn't actually require a screwdriver to open, and this is because it's actually used for more than just a screw on the back of the phone. It does look cool on the back, adding a bit of detail and verticality to the device itself, like I said, but you can actually fit a small amount of cool attachments to the back of the phone. I did have a kickstand for it, but it unfortunately broke. You know, while a cool thing, it is just plastic after all, and therefore a lot less invincible than they probably advertise it as. But you can also get a lanyard for your phone, so if you're someone who is prone to dropping it and, you know, smacking it against things all the time, then maybe that is for you. You can also get a card holder that screws directly to the back of the device using some slightly longer screws in these mounts and this here. So, you know, if you're someone that likes to keep your cards close, it's a great idea. While very cool, and I absolutely love the idea of customizability with this phone, I don't think it's the best implemented idea ever, you know, especially with a kickstand. You know, it has its uses, but overall it's just not that great in practice. This shouldn't take away from the device itself, however, as I have heard good things about both the lanyard and the card holder. Another unfortunate thing about these attachments is that they are only available in a single colour, that being the really nice neon orange that you can get for the phone itself. While it is the best looking colour they have, the downside is that it is out of stock way more often than not. So if you are looking for a matching colour and are stuck waiting to get the orange, then you're going to be out of luck for a while. The black doesn't look too bad with it, but it still isn't the best looking, and obviously if you didn't get that colour, then you're a bit shit out of luck really. This is all optional, however, so you don't need to worry about it should you not want to. I did run the kickstand for a few days, but it sort of sticks out a bit too much. It kept getting caught in my pocket and whatnot. It was useful for if I wanted to stand the phone up, which, you know, I suppose I'd be a bit pissed off if a kickstand didn't do that, but it just took away from the overall experience, and so I imagine it might be more useful for someone that has to have their phone, like, kept up all the time and whatnot, but I'm just not one of those people. You know how I sort of took the SIM tray off screen to not spoil a surprise? We're about to get it right back out again, so, you know, good on me for putting all this stuff away. Obviously, with a standard SIM slot in most smartphones, you have two SIM slots in the SIM tray. So, you know, you have one on the top and one on the bottom, or if you've got one of those awful cheap phones, you just have a really long one with two SIM slots in it. This one is no different. You can have a SIM on the front or the back, like, you know, I have one here. But here's the really cool thing here. Now, this is a feature that was actually removed from a lot of flagship phones years and years ago, but has actually been brought back with this one. As you can see here, I have a 500GB micro SD card that I use for storage of, like, games for light emulation, as well as some, you know, PS2 games. It's really, really useful, actually. I mean, this thing has 128GB of storage standard, but having an extra 500 gigs and up to 2 terabytes of expandable storage is absolutely incredible, and I think that is a very, very underappreciated aspect of this phone. Even the S25 Ultra and other, like, flagship phones don't have that. So to see that on a budget device, incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I will forever love this device for reasons like that. I won't go super in-depth about the camera's specs, as, you know, numbers themselves don't always mean tons in modern hardware with the amount of software integration a lot of phone manufacturers use these days, but the camera is more than serviceable, however, on this, allowing me to take some really high-quality images that can be edited and upscaled via the use of AI. I know, AI this and AI that, it will be the end of us, but as for the time being, in this context, it isn't too bad and allows some photos to really shine under the right circumstances. This seems to be fairly similar between the Nothing Phone 1 as well as, you know, what you have here in the CMF phone, because they both use the same Sony 50MP camera that, you know, so that does make sense. Most differences in the image will definitely come from the differences in software. I was talking with my friend about it and he actually prefers the Nothing Phone 1 pictures, while I prefer the CMF. It's going to be down to personal preference, but, you know, take a look at what both phones can do and then judge from there. Both phones will be able to take a very decent high quality image, and so if you're someone that really cares about photography, maybe this is for you, but for someone like me that just wants to take light photos here and there, more than serviceable, absolutely fine. Both the Nothing Phone 1 and the CMF phone have 8GB of RAM, with an option on the Nothing Phone to go up to 12GB. Both phones also have a RAM booster option within the settings, allowing an extra 8GB of system storage to be used as memory, allowing for a maximum of 16GB for the base models and, 20GB for the better Nothing Phone 1 model. That is definitely a very good amount considering the price of both of these devices, especially the CMF phone. The S25 Ultra I think only has 12 gigs of RAM? Possibly 16? But that phone costs like 1,500 quid. This costs way less than that. We will get onto the price soon, but for now I'm just going to keep you in suspense. You know what, actually, fuck it, let's talk about the price. Let's go over that. The Nothing Phone 1 on release in 2022 retailed for about £399 for the base model, which is what I have here. And that, for a mid-range phone, especially a new one on the market, is actually pretty good. It was incredibly well received considering that this was the first big device from a new company on the block. This phone wasn't actually released in North America, to the dismay of some tech enthusiasts, which actually caused Nothing to release all of their subsequent phones to our transatlantic cousins. Considering that this will turn 3 years old this year, it can still be an incredibly good phone for some tasks such as light gaming and productivity alike. You can get these for about £200 in decent nick now, and that is genuinely a really great price. The CMF phone is where, in my opinion, the magic really happens. The pricing is one of the main reasons as to why this is my favourite phone at the moment. Brand new, the phone in its base 128GB model is only £209, with a 256GB model going up to £239. That is incredibly cheap. Yes, this is a budget phone, and because of this, certain cutbacks had to be made, but for the price, this thing is fucking brilliant. I will forever shield this device. This phone has features that put even the iPhone 16 Plus to shame, and considering that phone sells for the best part of £800, getting features equal to it or better than it for about a quarter of the price is genuinely mind-blowing. I managed to cop this beast about 2 days after it was released, on offer for about £170, which is genuinely one of the best purchases I have ever made. I just love how good it is for that price. Think of it like AMD graphics cards or something like that. They simply aren't as good as Nvidia is in most areas, but considering that they are a lot cheaper, they are absolutely fantastic. The price to performance ratio is incredible on them, which still makes them a very popular choice in today's GPU economy. The displays on both of these devices are basically the same spec-wise, but the CMF is about 1/4 of an inch bigger, and instead of the offset punch hole camera, has a centralized punch hole camera. Both of these phones use a standard 2400 by 1080 resolution on an AMOLED panel. The best part of this, however, is that both devices have, get this, a 120Hz refresh rate. 120Hz. You know how incredible that is? For this, 170 quid this cost me, and I'm getting a better screen than you have in an iPhone. The iPhone 16 Plus, tech giant Apple's latest offering, has only 60Hz, which in this day and age is just terrible, especially for 799 quid. While 799 allows you to get the brand new state-of-the-art A18 chip, most people won't utilise the best parts of it all the time. Everyone, however, that buys a device like this will have to use the screen, and so I personally believe that resources would be better spent making the screen feel as fluid as possible. And that is exactly what CMF has done. I still can't get over that a budget-friendly option that I got for less than £200 has a better screen than the iPhone 16 Plus. And yes, I can already sense the Apple keyboard warriors typing, "But the iPhone 16 has a higher resolution, and so the budget option isn't better." And yes, on paper, bigger numbers might be a better option for you. But with a screen this small, are you really slightly noticing a bigger number? The 1080p resolution for the CMF phone is more than serviceable. Don't forget this phone costs just over £200, and you get an awful lot for that price. You may be thinking, however, that everything sounds a bit too good to be true, and so what's the catch? And honestly, for the price, there isn't one. A budget phone like this is advertised as such, and so doesn't have all the features that a flagship or even a mid-range like this might have had. First off, the big one for some is that the CMF phone doesn't actually include an NFC chip. This means that things like wireless charging, as well as paying for things with your phone, is just absolutely impossible. This is definitely a deal breaker for some, but as someone like me who never needs to use the NFC, this is just really a non-issue. As we mentioned earlier, the camera module isn't the greatest thing in the world when compared to the iPhone 16 Pro Max or the S25 Ultra. You aren't going to be shooting movies on this thing, but again, with a budget device, this isn't what it's meant for. It does do 4K video at 30 FPS, but, you know, there is no optical image stabilization, which might be a deal breaker for some. Electronic image stabilization is present, and so that might make up for some of the shortcomings, but, you know, it's not for everyone. Another pretty major shortcoming for this device could be that the water and dust resistant rating sits at only IP52. This is serviceable for most areas and situations with basic levels of dust and rain, like the UK that I currently live in. You'll definitely be alright should you decide to use it sparingly in the rain or whatnot, and, you know, if it's face up, then the glass will more than protect, like, the device itself. It's fine. It's only really if you're planning on using the device side on where it can get in some of the cracks, or if it's facing down like this, you might have a few problems. This is obviously mainly due to the fact that the entire back of the phone can come off, revealing a lot of internals, and so there is not a lot of protection to be had. As I say though, it should be more than fine for most environments and situations. As I also say, I'm from the UK, which obviously isn't the most arid place on Earth, so your mileage may vary. The chipset in this phone isn't the most, you know, particularly strong thing in the world, but it is decent. Like, it's more than serviceable. The MediaTek Dimensity 7300 is actually fairly good at doing what I wanted to do. It even does PS2 emulation semi-decently, game depending of course. PSP emulation is an absolute breeze though. It tackles games like Warzone Mobile and Fortnite at about 30 to 40 FPS at low settings, which isn't the greatest, but more than playable for a mobile game. Less intensive games like Minecraft run incredibly well, steadily over 100 FPS in my experience. It's definitely going to be able to do some more intensive tasks that you throw at it. Activating the RAM booster would probably help in that regard as well. All that being said, however, it isn't quite a Snapdragon 8 chip that I am used to with the S23 Ultra. Overall, for a budget device, this thing absolutely slaps, and dare I say dominates in the price range it sits at. Fuck all those Samsung A devices as well as the iPhone 16e. This phone is unironically where it is at. The build quality is sound, the specs, while not flagship level, are fantastic for the price, and the whole customization aspect is just the cherry on top of the cake. Being able to add any skin to the software due to it being Android, plus using a wide range of colours for the device itself, is just such a unique selling point that makes this the most fun phone I have ever used, and I will not be told otherwise. You know, there is a reason why I use this over my 2023 flagship. It doesn't just feel like another Samsung in a sea of identical Samsung phones. It feels unique to me and to my tastes at whatever point, and that is a feeling that money just can't pay for. Except it can with this phone. This was the first phone that Nothing made, as I mentioned earlier, and what a belter device to enter with. This thing was surprisingly solid for a budget device. A decent chipset with a great display, all paired together with an incredibly solid and unique version of Android simply called Nothing OS. This phone was instantly compared to the latest iPhone at the time, the iPhone 13. This was mainly because of its eerily similar design and dimensions. You could even take the case of an iPhone 13 and slap it on the Nothing Phone 1 and it would fit pretty much perfectly. The design of the phone was what initially stood out to me in that sense. I was actually looking for an Android phone that had the nice sharp looking design that iPhones new and old were famous for, and this phone just happened to fit the bill perfectly. I'm glad it did, as I wouldn't have become a fan of their products nearly as soon as I did. One of the main selling points of this device though, other than its overall shape, was the inclusion of Nothing's brand new glyph interface. This is the main design choice that really sold this device to me and many other people. It was a really unique feature that made for a neat idea that had a really good amount of functionality. It was, and still is, a really cool feature that I can't help but mess around with whenever I use this phone. The whole idea of this design was that there was a series of lights that lit up on the back with several different light formations for different things. You could make it light up a specific way for calls and texts, as well as use the glyphs as a torch in the dark. It's a really unique approach to design, and I think it is a staple of all the subsequent Nothing phones. Just look at this. How sick is that? How fucking sick is that? Like, just, how cool is that? Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? It's so unique. This interface linked up well with the custom sounds they made for calls and notifications that just gave this phone an otherworldly feeling that other devices just couldn't reach. All of that for £400 was an incredible deal to me. Yes, it was less powerful than the phone I had before, but it didn't take away from the fact that it was probably the best phone I had ever owned at that point. It is still my favourite phone to this day, purely because of how good it felt to use when I first got it. No other piece of technology has given me that premium feeling, even the phones that cost 3 to 4 times as much. That reason right there is why Nothing has already cemented itself as a solid competition within the phone market. The budget to mid-range market is really under threat from these guys, and it shows. Their products are just simply incredible. There was also a white variant of this phone, which, I admit, does look better on its own, but with the glyph interface, I just thought that the black would really accentuate the lights, which, to its credit, you know, it does. This phone isn't perfect, however. Obviously, with it being the first device from a new company, you know, on the block, there are going to be a few small issues for them to overcome, which, you know, they eventually did. The software had a few issues on launch, which were quickly ironed out to make it a far more enjoyable and intuitive experience for its users. Compatibility with third-party accessories like smartwatches and earphones was improved, as well as making Nothing OS a seriously solid operating system that really holds its own, even when compared to things like One UI and Harmony OS. Let's actually quickly go over the software and why it is absolutely perfect for these phones and their slightly worse specs. Nothing OS is absolutely amazing, with it being mostly compared to the Google Pixel phones. Because Android is a Google property, there is only Google's bloatware slapped onto it, and that sort of fits with everything quite well, as those are the services that Android is built around. This of course on its own can be fairly lightweight. Nothing OS is similar in the sense that there aren't any major apps that are Nothing owned, except from the optional ones that we will go over shortly. This means that most of the OS runs off of Google services, and that is the only bloatware that is pre-installed onto the OS itself, making this very, very lightweight for the lower sort of quality specs in here. This phone still feels incredibly fast to this day. It's amazing how good this phone is. The skin just looks really fashionable as well. This wallpaper in the background it's a default Nothing wallpaper. Like, it looks really fashionable. And I mean, just look at all these widgets. They look really futuristic and cool. And the settings. Oh, someone's commented on one of my YouTube videos. You know, look at you know, they look fairly normal, right? But there's a whole area for the glyph interface, and like you can customize it and everything. Like, it's a really, really cool looking skin, and I love how unique it feels for the overall vibe that these devices are going for. All the unique fonts and widgets make for a really unique experience that just isn't really gotten on like an S23 or an iPhone. Because it is Android though, everything that was previously available to you on another similar Android device like a Samsung is still available to you. Any Samsung app that is pre-installed on any Samsung device is still available for download should you need to. Things like Samsung Wearable were very useful to me when I used my Watch 4 and my Buds 2 Pro when I first got this phone. I don't need to mention it earlier, but the synergy between mobile and desktop will be a lot easier considering there aren't any Samsung hoops you need to jump through in order to access your things. Everything feels a lot neater on all devices for this reason. Obviously this isn't exclusive to Nothing OS, it's just a nice bonus with not having any proprietary bloatware pre-installed with every device. Overall though, it is certainly a solid operating system that I thoroughly enjoy using. It's easy to switch to and fro should I decide to go back to my S23 Ultra for a while. One thing you may notice across all Nothing and CMF phones is this whole software navigation system. Those of you on a Samsung or other similar brands may be familiar with the 3-button system, you know, allowing you to sort of have one button for an app view, the back button, and then the home button. It's a simple navigation system that has lasted Samsung for, you know, an incredibly long time, and, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There is another option for navigation, however, and it's this, swipe gestures. So, you know, with your swipe gestures, it's a bit similar to what you would find on an iPhone. So, instead of the 3 buttons at the bottom, you have this one little bar at the bottom. I don't know if you'll be able to see. It's just under the Google search bar, and you can swipe that up, and you can, you know, turn things off, you can close your apps from there, and if you drag in from the side, that'll be your back button and whatnot. You know, it sounds a bit annoying, but it's actually really easy to use and get used to. And that is what they use by default on these phones, so I sort of had to get used to it. Bit annoying, but it works, and I actually prefer it over the 3-button navigation system now. You can switch it back to the 3-button system that is present on things like the Pixel devices with the reverse layout, or probably the normal layout for some people, because I'm pretty sure Samsung's the only way that does it, the sort of back button on the right. But yeah, you can switch it back to that should you decide you don't want to get used to it, but I actually quite enjoy this, and I think you might too should you decide to pick one of these up. The best thing about this company, in my opinion, though, isn't the quality of their phones. While amazing, and I will shill them forever, Carl Payne, please sponsor me. I'll love you forever. Pretty please. The main reason as to why I love Nothing and CMF is that they are trying to make their own tech ecosystem with equally good quality for the same cheaper price tag that you see with their phones. You may notice the watch that I wear throughout some of my videos. That watch is indeed the CMF Watch Pro 2. This thing is honestly really neat. You know, I absolutely love this thing. While not as feature heavy as the offerings that the competition like Samsung and Apple provide, it serves its purpose incredibly well with little to no issues. I have an old Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 that I got back in 2021, and while it's an absolute banger watch with features I'd love on this, I really hated the idea of taking off every 2 to 3 days to charge it. I ended up just getting to a point where I left it off because it was less of a hassle for me to deal with. You may think, why not just get a regular analog watch? And yeah, I've tried them as well. They're great for what you need them for, which is obviously just telling the time, but considering that's all they do, I might as well just look at my phone, and you know, they were a bit boring for what I wanted out of a watch. What I wanted out of a watch, obviously to tell the time, but you know, there were obviously a few other things, like to track my heart rate, sleep and stress, etc. A regular old analog watch isn't going to do that, and so I looked for a decent mid-ground. Something that gives me the basic features I'd like out of a watch, but also one I don't have to take off to charge every few days at least. The CMF Watch Pro 2 fit that bill almost perfectly. As I said previously, the features on this aren't as rich as the Galaxy Watch 4, which is an old watch at this point, but they don't need to be. It's a watch at the end of the day. It doesn't need to browse the internet and whatnot. This amazing watch gives me all the features I'd like and lasts about 10 to 11 days. That battery life is simply incredible. I usually like to charge it with a bit of battery left, like some, I don't know, 20-30%, as I have real OCD like that, but I can easily go a week or so without having to even think about charging this thing. That watch really surprised me in the sense that I tend to usually only wear a watch for about a month or so before I get bored of it, but this one has been on my wrist almost every day for about 8 months. You know how incredible that is? That might not sound like loads, but that is huge for me. I absolutely love this thing, and you can get all of that for a really low price of £69. £69 for a very competent smartwatch is an absolutely incredible price, and while yes, I say with the phone, it's budget oriented, and so if you're looking for all the bells and whistles, then this won't be for you, but for the features it does give you, that is an absolutely astounding price. The watch itself, like with any other smartwatches from other brands, is better utilised with the specially made app, the aptly called CMF Watch app. We all know that proprietary apps suck for things like this. After all, I can't really recall one singular great experience I've had with Samsung wearable, but this one actually works pretty well and is easy to understand. All you have to do is hand over your email to make an account, and then you're done. From here, you have a dashboard in which you can track everything that your watch does directly from your phone. You can also track your exercise through this tab here, which I'm not going to show you because it does show a map of your local area, so not a great idea for me right now. You can also check data of the watch itself, you know, yes, you can have my permission to synchronize text and whatnot, but, you know, you can check everything from here. You can check the battery life, you can check all of, like, your notifications, your settings for it, as well as change the face for it. So, you know, it's a pretty intuitive app. All of your account details are on the 4th tab, but you don't really need that to function with this watch, you know, you don't need that. I have noticed the synergy and the connectivity is best when used on the CMF phone or even the Nothing phone. You know, I have used it on my S23 Ultra, but for some reason the watch kept disconnecting, and I don't know if that's a problem with the watch or the phone or whatnot, but I have noticed that it works best when using like a Nothing or CMF product, so that might be something to take into account. That isn't even all with this watch, you know? You know how I shield this phone for its level of customizability? Well, the watch has it too, sonny boy! That's right. You may be wondering how on God's green, luscious, flat earth a watch might even have customizability. Well, a lot of you with smartwatches now, you can change the straps, which is obviously included on here with this one, but you can actually change the bezel as well to add up to that level of personalization. While not the most in-depth customization system in the world, the fact that you can even do that on a device this cheap is just mind-blowing. I would show you how to do it like I did with this, but I actually lost the kit, so I can't change the bezel for you right now until I find it, but I have no idea where it is, so you're just going to have to use your imagination. Basically, all you do is you use these little tabs under here to pull the straps out, and then you take this off, and put the other one on, and then put the straps back in. You know, it's easy work. I did actually manage to get the reason I bought a new kit, I was planning on doing so anyway, but the reason I bought one when I did was because I actually lost the bezel for this, and so it was nice to get a bezel back. But I did actually buy a bezel off of Amazon, so the third-party customization for this is still just as solid, if not, you know, better. You might think that a good smartphone and a solid smartwatch for about £275 to £300, phone model depending, is a banger deal. Well, there's more. There's more. That's right, Sonny Jim. Earbuds! For an extra £59, you can have access to the CMF Buds Pro 2. They do have a non-pro variant that are slightly cheaper, sitting at only £39, but you might as well just spend the extra 20 and have a slightly better experience. Not to take away from the non-pro buds, as the features and quality you get for 40 quid is absolutely insane, but these are just far better. While the quality isn't the best when compared to the Samsung Buds 3 Pro or the AirPods whatever the fuck ones we're on now, for 60 quid you get some banger features like ANC or active noise cancelling, spatial audio and customizable sound presets. This is all done in the Nothing X app, and yes I know, proprietary apps suck donkey dick, but this one, like the CMF Watch app, is actually quite intuitive to use. Basically, this is where you connect all your extra earbuds and whatnot. Obviously not watches, but still. From here, you can easily change the settings on your earbuds with everything you might want being right there in front of you. You can see the battery, as well as change the spatial audio setting from just this button here. No, it's really easy. You can change the touch controls on this tab here. You know, they're actually surprisingly in depth, and you can customize the ones that both the dial on the front, like look at this thing here. This changes the volume, and it can do other things. It's a button as well. It's really, really useful. But there are a lot you can do with these. I don't even use all of these. I've set them. But there's just so much for me here that I find it hard to keep track of it all. You have a fully customizable equalizer that you can, you know, make your own presets for, or use the standard number of presets that come in here. You also have, like, other Dirac Optia, whatever the fuck this is called. You know, it's not available when your spatial sound is activated, but you can have that. Like, it's so cool, the amount of things you get for this. Having all these settings for someone like me who listens to a fairly wide variety of music is actually really cool. And having that right in the app settings itself is just baked in there is really useful, and I don't need a third-party app for that. The noise control setting is here as well, so you can obviously switch to your noise cancellation, your transparency mode, or just off if you don't really need them, or you're trying to save some battery life. You know, these things are actually really good. You get like up to 8 hours of continuous music playback. That's amazing. I fell asleep with these on once, and I woke up, and they were still going, and I slept for like 8-9 hours. Like, how great is that? They also have a setting here that you might have noticed called Ultra Bass. Now, what this does is it basically, fairly self-explanatory, just slaps bass onto everything you listen to, really. And now, I, like many of you out there probably, love extra bass. I love bass. You know, I own a pair of Neurophones, and they specialize in fat bass that literally just shakes your ears. My DAC that I use for my computer has a special button just labeled extra bass, and it is beautiful. So having ultra bass on this is actually quite nice. But you might notice that even though I have it on, I have it set to level 1. That is because anything above like level 2 adds quite a lot of distortion for my taste, and so not the greatest, but it's nice to have here nonetheless. For 60 quid, you are getting an awful lot of quality here. Obviously, with like the phone and the watch, there are cost-cutting methods in place in order to keep the price down, but honestly, you'd hardly notice. I know I said before that the quality of these isn't going to be as good as some other major players in this space, but they really aren't trying to go for their lofty heights, in my opinion. If you're buying earbuds, you aren't really buying them for the absolute quality, but more for the convenience. It's easy to slap these bad boys in your pocket and call it a day. You know, I do have a better setup for my phone, which is, you know, actually this abomination of cables right here. This is a cheap pair of IEMs, as well as a small USB-C connected DAC. Now, the quality of this is probably better than the major players in this space, but it's just not convenient to carry around and haul around with me, so I still primarily use these if I'm going out. That aside though, you get a shit ton of features on these that you would usually have to pay at least £100 to £150 for, and that on its own is reason enough as to why I love these things. I used to use a pair of Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, and while I love them, they unfortunately broke, leaving me with the option to get the Buds 3 or the Buds 3 Pro, or a cheaper alternative with the same features but slightly less quality. Honestly, that wasn't the greatest comparison in my head just now, but these were easy to choose. It wasn't even a competition. At the end of the day, if you have £219 to spend on the Buds 3 Pro and you like them, then fantastic for you. But for a budget alternative, these are the best choice, no question. So, let us just quickly take inventory of the CMF set of devices real quick. You got a solid phone with a decent flagship-esque features such as expandable storage and a sleek 120Hz display, all with a customizable exterior. You get a nice looking watch that has multiple smartwatch features and a customizable bezel and strap and an 11-day battery life, and you get a solid pair of earbuds with a nice design to them and with features and quality that can rival some far more expensive options from competing brands. Sounds amazing, right? Well, if you go with the cheapest model phone that I have here, plus the watch and the regular non-Pro Buds, you're getting the entire set for just under £320. 320 quid! That is cheaper than this phone alone cost me. Like, that is incredible. It's just over 75% of the price than this phone cost me. You know how insane that is for the entire set? Devices that are this fun, with this amount of quality and a premium feel for less than an actual mid-range phone, is just incredible to me. This phone is actually better than my Nothing Phone 1 in almost all aspects, and the CMF phone cost me less than half what I paid for this. Should you decide on the Buds Pro 2, as well as the best model of the CMF phone, altogether still costs a very respectable £370. That is still less than what I paid for this. You can have a seriously good time and still look damn good while doing it. Let's be fair for a second and say that because these devices came out in 2024, let's use the 2024 offerings over whatever models and whatnot would have come out this year for, competing brands. The Buds 3 start at £159, with the most basic version of the Galaxy Watch 7 starting out at £289. Phone dependent, let's be kind here and choose the basic S24, that starts at £699. That is the best part of $1,150. That is 1,150 quid, which is just insanely expensive. Obviously, with the S24, you get that amazing Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is an absolute beast, along with the other peripherals that have most of the features that the Pro offerings have. You'll definitely have some serious kit with that money. The Galaxy Buds 3 Pro are an eye-wateringly high £219, with the Galaxy Watch 7 Ultra being an even more eye-wateringly £599. The S24 Ultra rounds this one out with an incredibly high £1,249, which is just, it's insane. I know that the phone is absolutely amazing, but considering it's just the exact same as the S23 Ultra, which in itself is the exact same as the S22 Ultra, it's just, it's blasphemy. All of that comes to an excruciatingly bank-breaking £2,067, which is just, incredibly high. As I say, this is the pure top-of-the-line stuff for 2024, so you are going to be getting everything that is on offer. All the best features, all the best tech, shoved into all of this. But do you really need all of that? Who realistically consistently uses all the power that the S24 Ultra offers? Barely anyone. My mum used to have an S24 Ultra, and all she ever did on it was browse Facebook and play crosswords. I told her that she didn't really need it, but she didn't listen. And so about 80% of that phone was sat gathering dust because she just wasn't reaching the level of power that it can offer. Surely, if you were always using that power, you'd want to invest in something a bit more catered to that. The ROG Phone 9 Pro is the most powerful phone on the market right now, with that Snapdragon 8 Elite and 24GB of RAM. And that is cheaper than the S24 Ultra, like at 512 gigs, let alone the S25 Ultra. I know this is a huge tangent, for the best part of 2100 quid, you could get almost 6 of the full CMF bundle. 6! I know that status is a huge thing, even though people deny it, and so people hear the word budget and immediately vomit, but these devices are advertised as premium devices at budget costs. I, for one, like many of you will be afraid to admit to, like being admired for the things I have. I'm man enough to admit it. I went outside with my Z Fold 5 thinking, yeah, I'm the big head honcho around here. But honestly, I feel just as good, if not better, going out with this thing. It's so unique and cool looking that I absolutely adore it. I'll always remember the time when I went to get my Z Fold 5. I had my Nothing phone on me and the guy serving me told me that he liked the case I had for my iPhone, but I had the pleasure of introducing him to these devices by telling him that it was part of the actual phone itself and not a case. That was a true feeling of power right there. Both of these phones have been real conversation starters with several like-minded people, and I honestly love that. It really goes to show that even though this thing costs as little as it does, and that it doesn't have an Apple logo slapped onto it, it can still be appealing and brilliant to use. I am honestly so glad that I became an early adopter to this whole tech ecosystem that, Nothing and CMF provide. I'm going to be sat on top of my metaphorical ivory tower, knowing that I was there and believed in the goodness of their products, once more people learn and finally realise that these devices are insanely brilliant for what they are. They don't claim to have everything that the S25 Ultra or the iPhone 16 Pro Max have. They don't need to. They have their own niche and they stick to it, and it works. Just watch videos of other people far more qualified than I am talk about these devices. Apart from the obvious drawbacks that I've mentioned here today, they are almost all positive, and for good reason. Now, I can finally say what the title implies this late into the video. This lot has told me that cheap tech is indeed fun again. This whole package here is so charming with its selling points without compromising usability. This thing does exactly what other phones do brilliantly. Obviously not as good as the device costing almost 8 times as it does, of course, but the fact that it even comes close when costing that little fraction of the price is just mind-blowingly amazing. So, before I end this video, I urge you, if you are in the market for a new phone, or even just looking for a cheap work phone, don't look at these phones and think, they must be shit because they are cheap, because I promise you that they are amazing at what they do. They have features that even flagships of today don't have, and that is merit enough. I know that in today's capitalist paradise that has been brought to us, we are taught that cheap is bad and therefore buy expensive, but Nothing, and by extension CMF, are really trying to push against that agenda by releasing fun and cheap devices that are just as good as the expensive ones. So once again, I please insist that you at least check out these devices from both brands as a possible option. There's a reason why they have a good reputation in the tech space right now, and how they got that reputation in as little time as they have. It'd be a shame for you to miss out on some of the best devices of the 2020s because it doesn't have a fancy logo slapped onto it. Don't be one of those people. Nobody likes those people. You know who you are, Mr. or Mrs. I buy an iPhone because I like the Apple logo and it makes me look rich. Anyway, before I offend another major population, let me bring this video to an end by saying thank you. Thank you for watching this video if you've made it this far. I bet only 3 people are going to see this, and so there's no point in me remaining somewhat professional. Regardless, if you're one of those elusive 3, then please take my sincerest thanks for taking the time to watch this shitty little YouTube video of me ranting about how great these new kids on the block are. While I don't know nearly as much as some others out there, I like to think that I know a fair bit about this whole tech thing, and so I hope some of you use this advice and knowledge to try and push the better value competition further. Maybe it'll finally prompt Apple and Samsung to push themselves a bit further than just trying to one-up each other with the same phone every year. Regardless, that's it from me today. I hope you went on to enjoy this one, and if so, consider checking out some of my other videos, or even my gaming channel, GC Gaming, if you want to see me being completely stupid. Anyway, that's me done. I hope you guys have a great day. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye guys.